They say some moments in life stay with you forever. But I never imagined that one of those moments would arrive quite literally at my doorstep on a quiet Thursday afternoon. I had planned a simple day. Just me, a good book in my armchair, maybe a pot of tea if I felt ambitious. Nothing more. But then came the sound, slow, hesitant footsteps on the porch, followed by a knock that carried a strange weight, as if the person on the other side was carrying more than just themselves. When I opened the door, there he was. Ethan, my grandson. Before I tell you what happened next, let me pause and ask you something, my dear viewers. Where are you watching from tonight? I love reading your comments. Are you joining me from the US, from the UK, maybe from Canada, or even somewhere further away? Drop it down below, because every story feels warmer when we know who we're sharing it with. And while you're here, don't forget to subscribe to our channel. We're on a journey together, and your support can help us reach our first milestone of 500 subscribers. It means the world to me, and truly, every single one of you is a part of this little family we're building here. Now back to Ethan. It had been months since I last saw him. He was always the quiet one in the family, polite, never making a fuss. When he did visit, it was usually at his mother's urging, and even then, he'd slip away early with some excuse. But this day was different. He stood on my porch, in a wool coat, pulled tightly around him, though the air was mild. His hair was damp, as if he'd walked through drizzle, and on his face was a nervous half-smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. "Grandma," he said softly, "I hope it's okay that I came." Of course it was okay. My heart softened immediately. I stepped aside, the wooden floorboards creaking under his shoes as he entered. Inside, the air was warm, faintly scented with cinnamon from a candle I'd lit earlier. But as he paused, looking around the room, as though seeing it for the first time, I knew. This wasn't just a casual drop-by. Something heavier lingered in the air between us. I led him into the living room, where the soft lamplight pooled golden over the floral sofa. He didn't sit right away. Instead, he drifted toward the mantel, where family photographs lined the shelf. His eyes landed on one, my late husband, his grandfather George, smiling during our anniversary trip to Maine years ago. "I've been thinking about him a lot," Ethan murmured, his voice almost breaking. It caught me off guard. George had been gone nearly 15 years, and Ethan had only been in his early 20s back then. "What about him?" I asked gently. Ethan shrugged, still gazing at the photo. "The way he carried himself, the way he treated you, I don't think I ever really noticed before." I sank into my armchair, studying him. There was something in his tone, an ache, a searching like he was reaching for something just out of sight. Finally, he sat down across from me, elbows on his knees. The silence between us, thick, but not uncomfortable. After a long pause, he whispered, "I've been going through some things. I didn't know who else to talk to." My heart ached with tenderness. Ethan wasn't one to bare his soul easily, and the fact that he chose me stirred something deep inside. I leaned forward. "Then talk to me," I said. "Whatever it is, we'll figure it out together." He rubbed a hand over his jaw, eyes clouded. I keep feeling like I'm standing on the edge of something. Like there's a part of life I've been holding back from, and I don't even know why. His words hung in the air, heavy and raw. I thought back to my younger days, to the times I'd stood at similar thresholds, afraid to move forward. Slowly, I reached out with words. I wish someone had told me back then. I know that feeling, I said softly. You're not lost, Ethan. You're just standing at a doorway. And sometimes you just need someone to remind you it's okay to walk through. For a long time, he sat there in silence, eyes lowered, as though letting the weight of those words settle into his bones. Then he smiled. Not the polite, practiced smile I'd seen from him so many times before, but something warmer, freer, almost like relief. I knew you'd understand, Ethan whispered. We sat there for nearly an hour, the little cinnamon candle flickering between us, as though it too was listening in. Slowly, he began to open up. He spoke of work off the pressure to be someone he wasn't, of the mask he wore each day. And then little by little, his voice grew steadier, as if he was finally setting down a burden that had been pressing on his shoulders for far too long. At one point, I reached over and placed my hand on his. His fingers tightened around mine, not in desperation, but in assurance. As if to say, I'm still here. I'm not giving up. It was such a simple gesture, yet it felt like a bridge closing the years of polite distance between us. The afternoon shadows stretched longer across the room, but neither of us moved to turn on another light. It was as if the dimness gave us permission to speak honestly, to be real. I don't know where this road leads, Ethan admitted finally, his voice trembling. But I want to stop living like I'm just passing time. I squeezed his hand gently. Then don't, I said. Life doesn't wait for anyone, Ethan. Trust me, I know. When he left that evening, something about him had changed. His shoulders seemed lighter, his steps less hesitant. And when I watched him walk down the path under the lamplight, I knew we'd shared something we'd both remember. But that wasn't the end. Hours later, as the rain rolled across the night like a steady hum, I curled under a throw with my book. Just when my eyes began to close, the porch light blinked on. For half a second, I thought it was a raccoon setting off the sensor. But then came the knock, soft, familiar. When I opened the door, Ethan stood there. His hood pushed back, rain dripping from his hair in dark lines across his forehead. Sorry to come by late, he said. I was nearby. I just needed a place that makes sense. I didn't hesitate. I stepped aside and he slipped in, wiping his shoes on the old choir mat George and I had bought decades ago from a roadside stand. The smell of rain followed him into the warm air of my living room, where the lamplight lay across the rug, like golden silk. His breathing was quick, the kind of breath people take when they've been holding it together for too long. Tea, I asked gently. He nodded grateful and sank onto the sofa. Making tea is a ritual I've always loved, rinsing the pot, measuring the leaves, warming the cups, as if each little step trades a bit of your rushing for a slice of calm. By the time I returned with 2 steaming cups, Ethan had removed his jacket and was staring at the grandfather clock in the corner. That clock belonged to my father, I told him as I set the tray down. It runs slow if you don't speak kindly to it when you wind it. At least that's what George always said. Ethan's eyes stayed on the clock. I've been thinking about time a lot, he murmured. how it feels different depending on what you're carrying. I tilted my head. "And what are you carrying tonight, Ethan?" For a moment, he didn't answer. He cupped the tea in both hands, letting the steam fog his glasses. When he finally looked up, there was something raw in his face, less guarded than I'd ever seen. "Panic," he said quietly, "and regret. And these expectations I keep pretending I'm fine with." I didn't rush him. One thing you learn after 70 years of life is that people leap farther when you give them quiet ground to land on. I had a bad moment at work, he confessed. My manager called it a performance issue. I called it finally noticing I can't breathe there. I walked out. I didn't quit, but I walked out. And when I got outside, I didn't know where to go. So my feet just brought me here. He sipped his tea, and something in his shoulders softened, like he was finally exhaling. The rain brushed against the windows in thin silver threads. "I'm sorry you had a hard day," I said gently. "But I'm not sorry your feet remembered my address." A flicker of a smile crossed his face. Then his voice cracked. "I don't know who I'm supposed to be anymore, Grandma. That word supposed, it's such a heavy coat." I could see he'd been wearing it since he was a boy. Always trying to be the polite grandson, the steady son, the one who solved problems quietly and then got out of the way. A dangerous habit, one that can suffocate even the bravest heart. And now let me ask you guys watching this, have you ever felt like Ethan? Like you're living under the weight of supposed to be? You have to be this, you have to be that, and you're forgetting yourself. Share in the comments. I'd love to hear your story. And if you're still here, please don't forget to subscribe. We're on a small but meaningful journey to 500 subscribers, and I'm truly grateful to each and every one of you for being a part of this family. The world will nod and let you disappear if you train it to, I told Ethan. But may I show you something? He nodded. I set my tea aside and rose slowly from the armchair knees, protesting the way they always do. We walked down the narrow hallway, the soft creak of floorboards carrying us to the small room at the back of the house, George's old workshop. It's where the house still smells most like him. Oil-shaved wood graphite, and that faint sweetness of sawdust that never quite leaves. After George passed, I kept the door closed for months. It was too much, too raw. But one morning I opened it. I dusted the bench. I ran my fingers over tools I'd never dared to touch before. I began learning their names, though I could never learn the memory of his hands holding them. The room was just as he left it, chisels in a row, a hand plane with a nicked handle, jars of screws, neatly labeled in George's stubborn handwriting. On the far shelf sat a little wooden box. One nobody ever asked about. I lifted it down, set it on the workbench, and slid it toward Ethan. "I made this after he passed," I said softly. It took me a month to sand the corners smooth. My first and last project. I thought I'd make more. But maybe one thing done honestly is enough. The lid creaked as I opened it. Inside lay a stack of folded index cards, yellowed at the edges, bound with twine. Ethan's brow furrowed. Notes. Yes, I nodded. From George to us, for all the versions of our future. He used to slip me one in the bread box after a fight, or tuck one in my coat pocket when I looked too tired to keep pretending. After he was gone, I found a box of blank cards. So I began writing my own. Not to him exactly, but to the days that refused to make sense. I held one out. Do you want to read one? He took the top card, eyes moving across the page. Then he stopped, exhaled through his nose like a man setting down a suitcase he didn't realize he could put down. What does it say? I asked. He turned it so I could see. You are allowed to be unsure. Rest anyway. Begin anyway. We stood there, the card between us, like a lantern in the dimness. The rain outside deepened, drumming steady against the roof. Ethan reached for another card, read it silently, then slipped both into his pocket. His voice was lower now, almost breaking. Can I tell you, what's under the panic? Yes, I whispered. I think I don't want the life I've built. And I'm terrified of what people will think if I start taking it apart. I leaned against the bench, the old wood pressing into my hip. So many tidy words came to mind, advice, anecdotes, polished little sayings. But in the hardest seasons of my own life, I never remembered people's tidy words. I remembered how they stayed. What if we don't label it yet, I suggested. What if we make a small plan, something that won't frighten your bones? A small shaky laugh escaped him. A small plan. Yes, I smiled. First you sleep, then we eat something that crunches. After that, we write down 3 things you do not want and 3 things you do. Tomorrow we take one step that agrees with the list. Tiny. No big announcements, just one honest step. The silence stretched, broken only by the grandfather clock's slow reassurance from the living room. Then he whispered, I haven't slept properly in weeks. Then we'll start there. I made up the guest bed with the heavy quilt my mother stitched long ago from old scraps of fabric. Ethan lingered in the doorway, hands buried in his pockets, eyes scanning the room as though it might judge him. Do you ever feel guilty resting? He asked. All the time, I admitted. So I practiced not apologizing to the pillow. That coaxed a small smile from him, and I saw something in his face, unknot just a little. When he lay down, he didn't say goodnight. He only stared at the ceiling as though waiting for permission. I turned off the light, left the door ajar, the way I used to for my own children when they were small and storms were big. Back in the living room, I sat with my cooling tea and pulled a fresh card from the stack. In careful handwriting, I wrote our first list. 3 things he does not want. 3 things Ethan did not want. To be praised for work that left him hollow. To keep pretending a tight chest was normal. To remain the family's reliable ghost. 3 things he did want. To make things with his hands. To have at least one conversation a week that felt like walking across a sturdy bridge. To belong to a day that began without dread. I propped the card against the clock in the living room so I wouldn't forget to show him in the morning. But sometime after midnight, I woke to the soft scrape of footsteps in the hallway. Ethan stood in the doorway, hair-mussed eyes, restless with the look of someone whose mind refused to loosen its grip. Couldn't sleep, I whispered. I keep hearing my manager's voice, he admitted. And my father's, and my own. He rubbed the back of his neck. I don't want to be unfair to them, Grandma. They just want me to do well. He was right about that. Love and pressure often wear the same coat. Come, I said, patting the sofa. Sit. Breathe with me. He hesitated, then sank down beside me. I told him about a trick a nurse had taught me back when George was sick, and my heart was a skittish bird. Breathe in to the count of 4, hold for 4, out for 6. We did it together. In the dim room, I felt the rhythm gather us into stillness. After a few rounds, his chest eased. He rubbed his palms together, embarrassed. "It's strange," he said. "I'm 37 years old and I'm learning how to breathe from my grandmother. Lucky you," I smiled. "I happen to be very good at it." That coaxed a soft laugh. His eyes drifted to the mantel where George's photos sat smiling with that half-smirk men wear when they've just fixed a hinge. Ethan's face shifted like a winter sky when the wind moves through. "I miss him," Ethan said quietly. "I didn't know him the way you did. But tonight I keep imagining what he'd say." I didn't hesitate. He'd say, "There's no prize for how long you can hold your breath." And he'd say, "Take care of my girl." And by girl, he'd mean me. And he'd mean you too. Because in this family, those words stretch farther than we realize. We sat until the slow tick of the clock nudged us towards sleep. This time, Ethan yawned, sheepish, and rose to go. At the door, he paused. "Grandma." "Yes, love. Would you be upset if I called my mom tomorrow and told her I need some space?" My chest ached at the courage in his voice. "I will be proud of you for speaking in your own voice," I said. "And I'll be right here after you do." He nodded, then disappeared into the quiet hall. When I woke just after 6, the storm had eased into a hush. The house smelled of fresh rain and renewal. In the kitchen, I sliced apples, buttered bread, the rhythm of the knife, a soft metronome to my thoughts. Ethan shuffled in hair sticking up, looking both younger and older at once. I placed a plate before him. He ate like someone who'd been forgiven something. "I found this," he said at last, pulling a card from his pocket, the one that read, "You are allowed to be unsure. Rest anyway. Begin anyway." It kept me company, he admitted. I slid him another card, the one that I had written and left by the clock. He read it once, then again, as though mapping himself against the words. That last line, he said, tapping it, "Belong to a day that begins without dread." I don't even know what that looks like. "You can borrow one," I told him gently. "You can belong to mine for now. It starts with opening the workshop and choosing a small fix." His eyebrows lifted, curious. "A fix?" "Yes," I smiled. "There's a drawer in there that's been giving me attitude for months." Shoulder to shoulder, we stood at George's old workbench. I showed him how to rub candle wax along the edges, how to check for a swell in the wood, how to press and listen, letting the object tell you what's wrong instead of forcing it to behave. It's a lesson that works for more than wood. He loosened a screw, sanded the faintest edge, and then, smooth as a sigh, the drawer slid in and out with the self-respect of a well-made thing. "There," I said. "Friends, do you ever wish your day could start without any fear? If you could write yourself a little card like Ethan, what would you write to remind yourself every morning? Share in the comments. You might inspire someone watching this video. And if the story touches, you don't forget to subscribe. We're on our way to 500 subscribers, and each subscription is one step closer to sharing more inspiring and healing stories like this. The world had shifted, just slightly, but enough for both of us to feel it. Leonard looked down at his hands, almost as if rediscovering them. "I forgot how this feels," he murmured. "What do you mean?" I asked. "To make something cooperate without conquering it." He smiled faintly, and I knew in that moment he had touched something deeper than just the smooth glide of a fixed drawer. He stayed with me for most of the morning. On the porch, he made the phone call he'd been dreading to his mother. It wasn't a fight, not even a debate, just a quiet boundary set with love. And when he came back inside, there was something lighter in the way his shoulders carried him, as though the world had leaned closer instead of pulling away. We decided to take a slow walk. The neighborhood was painted in colors of wet bark and softened leaves after the rain. A young boy rode past us on his bicycle, splashing through puddles, waving like we were old friends. And for a moment, Leonard smiled, the way children smile when they're reminded of freedom. When we returned, he asked me something he rarely did. "Grandma, tell me a story about Grandpa, one you've never told anyone else." So I did. I told him about the winter just after Harold and I married. The furnace had broken down during a snowstorm and the house was freezing. But Harold, always inventive, rigged up an old fan and a small heater to push warm air down the hallway. We sat on the floor by the bedroom door, eating soup from mismatched bowls, because that was the only spot in the house where you couldn't see your breath. I laughed, remembering how ridiculous he looked, wires everywhere. But the vow in his eyes was clear. We are warm enough. It wasn't just about the temperature. It was about love. It was about survival. Leonard laughed with me, freely, openly, in a way I hadn't heard in years. Then he grew quiet. "What if I don't go back to the same job?" he asked. "Then you don't," I told him. "But what if I disappoint people?" "You will," I said gently. "And they will recover. Your life, Leonard, is not a group project." He studied me like my words were a secret map. "How did you learn to say things like that?" "By staying alive," I said. "And by loving people who didn't always approve of how I stayed alive." He didn't reach for my hand this time. Instead, he reached for the little index card. He turned it over, wrote something, and slid it back to me. On the back were 6 words: "Meet every Thursday. Build something. Talk like it matters." "I can do Thursdays," he said softly. "Even if I go back to work for a while, I can do Thursdays." I smiled. "Then on Thursdays, Leonard, we'll be carpenters of more than wood." He blushed a little, embarrassed by words that cut so close to the heart. But he nodded slow, serious, certain. We cleared the table together, passing dishes as though we'd rehearsed it for years. Before he left, he stood again at the doorway, the same spot he'd hovered the night before. But this time, instead of hesitating, he folded me into a hug, steady, grateful, without apology. "Thank you," he whispered into my hair, "for what I asked, for not making me make sense," he said, "for making me tea and time." I watched him walk down the path, with a stride that carried no apologies. Above him, the sky had washed itself clean, and the neighbor's maple tree caught the sun in its leaves like tiny pieces of gold. When the house grew quiet again, I wandered to Harold's old workshop. The fixed drawers slid back and forth with the proud sound of something set right. On the bench sat my wooden box of notes. I opened it and added a new card to the pile, written in the same firm script I once used for grocery lists and permission slips. You can change without vanishing. You can rest without failing. Love is the room we build to return to. I closed the lid, and in the stillness that followed, the house seemed to exhale. That's when it hit me. The miracle wasn't that my grandson had shown up at my door unannounced. It wasn't even that he'd asked for help. The miracle was simpler than that we had allowed ourselves to be known. And once you let yourself be known, dear friends, ordinary days are never quite ordinary again. Dear friends, if you have heard this far, I want to ask, where are you watching this video from? Leave a comment. I really want to know where the channel's audience is coming from in the world. If you feel that today's story touches your heart, don't forget to subscribe to the channel to help the channel reach the 500 subscribers mark soon. That is a great gift for me to have more motivation to bring you more emotional and meaningful stories. Thank you for listening, for being here.